Okay, Carl?
Yes.
Okay. My question for you is, what does the clause 3/5 mean according to Frederick Douglass?
Well, let me start off by saying I'm a graduate of a historical black college
Yes.
in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
That's Alabama A&M. I was taught that the founding fathers gave us slavery in the Constitution, referring to the 3/5 clause, saying that blacks are 3/5 of human beings. That's what I was taught.
That's what I heard too.
So therefore, the Constitution is a racist document.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slavery document. That's what I believe all my years until I started reading Douglas 6 years ago. In 1961, Frederick Douglass was in. Matter of fact, let's back up. Frederick Douglass at himself at one time also believed that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document. Mm-hmm. He took for granted what William Lloyd Garrison told him until Douglass did something very interesting. He went back and read the Constitution for himself, and he read the Federalist Papers. Douglass said, wait a minute, the Constitution is not a pro-slavery document. The Constitution, the 3/5 clause does not refer to the issue of blacks being less than human.
That's right.
But it was a compromise, as Douglas talks about in that debate he was in Glasgow, Scotland. It was a compromise used by the northern free states upon the southern slave states, where they can only count the slave population as 3/5 of a vote, which limit the slaves' congressional representation in Congress. Mm-hmm. Douglas wrote about that in 1861. Mm-hmm. I was never taught that. That's one of the biggest things that opened up my eyes when I started reading Douglas, when he gave clarity to the 3/5 clause. Mm-hmm. Because I was taught that blacks were excluded from the Constitution.
Yes.
Douglas came back and Douglas said in 1800, he said, wait a minute. Douglas said, wait, you're excluded? Douglas said the Constitution reads we the people. It doesn't read we the white people. Mm-hmm. Douglas said if black folks are people, they are to be included as benefactors of the Constitution.
Absolutely.
What Douglas said was this. Douglas said the problem is not with the Constitution. The problem is in the application of the Constitution.
Absolutely.
And he closed out by saying the problem is not with the Bible. The problem is in the application of the Bible.
Yes. And
that's what woke me up.
And, and the thing is that, like you, I've learned also that, it meant that we're 3/5 human. Okay, and it's so enlightening just to know that we have to eradicate the lies that have been taught to us. And once we free our minds, we'll be able to do what we are supposed to do naturally, keeping right with the Constitution, knowing that the Constitution is a legal document binding on us, that we will be able to do whatever we need to do, and we're just as much as part of the Constitution as anyone else. Yeah. Now, I want to go, my next question is, what was Douglas's stance on school choice? Because I love the way you put this.
Well, Douglas had experience when it dealt with school choice. If you read Douglas's life, when Douglas was in Rochester, New York, his daughter Rosetta was beginning school, and Douglas wanted to send his daughter to a school that was in his district. The only problem was that school was not an integrated school; it was a segregated school. And Douglas went there. He talked to the principal there. The principal was also a abolitionist. Mm-hmm. So Douglas thought that things were going to be okay. This daughter was going to be okay in the school. So over a period of time, he asked his daughter one night, how's classroom, your work coming? She said, I don't know, Daddy. He said, you don't know? They don't let me in the class. I sit outside in the hall. And so, of course, Douglas got advice. I said, wait a minute. Wow. Wait a minute. So what Douglas said, my money should follow my child. Mm-hmm. What the school board in Rochester wanted to do, they wanted Douglas to send his child to an inferior school outside his district.
Right.
He said, no. I said, my money's paid for right in this district. My daughter, my money should follow my child.
Yes.
And so what Douglas did through agitation, 8 years later, that school district became integrated. Uh-huh. And that's one thing I learned about Douglas. Douglas' philosophy was when he dealt with racism, he would face it, he would fight it, he would fix it. He would not finger point and insult and accuse.
That's right. And that's
so Douglas believed in school choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
kind of strange because, you take a look at the NAACP, they fight school choice.
I know, and I wonder about that because it's really something that is against us. If we want the best education, we're limiting ourselves, and that is why we have what we have in the cities because we
Yeah.
have people who selling us out.
What Douglas said, basically what Douglas saying was, even the poor has a right to school choice.
Amen to that.
And Douglas said, I will fight harder for the right to send my daughter to a school of my choice than I would to end slavery.
Well, we're going to be having a discussion here in Boston soon about school choice, and I think that what they want to do is stop school choice here. But I'm glad that you're here talking about that, and I hope that a lot of people who are listening to this are going to really get up in arms and say, wait a minute, my child should be able to go wherever they want to go and fight for the right for free choice, school choice.
See, that's the problem I see. The elites in both parties, they have school choice because they have money to send their child where they want to send them.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the poor, they want to tell us where we should send our child instead of letting us as a parent or a guardian to make that call. That's why I have a problem with what they're doing.
And you see what has happened.
What makes them think that their child's better than my child?
That's right. That's right. What has happened in this education thing is that we have a school to prison pipeline, which really just exacerbates the matter, and it really it irritates me to no end. But like you said, we can't be irritated. We need to get out there and open up new schools and do the things that we need to do as a Frederick Douglass Republican.
Douglas was talking to a group of black preachers in, I think it was D.C. He told them, said, preachers, you got to do three things. Save your money, buy land, and build schools.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
Save your money, buy land, and build schools.
And we have to educate our own because it's not going to happen.
And we have to educate our own. And what I learned, once you become educated, you must be a truth teller.
Mm-hmm.
You can't become intellectually obese and keep it to yourself.
That's right. That's
You
right.
got to become a truth teller and tell the truth. I don't care where it cuts.
That's
I don't
right.
care if it comes to Republican. I don't care if it comes to Democrat.
That's right.
I'm
That's
gonna tell
right.
the truth.
That's
because
right.
the truth is gonna set us free.
Amen. And so education is very, very important. The next question I have is, what was Douglass's stance on life?
When you look at Douglas's issue on life, of course, abortion was not the social issue of the day back then.
No.
It was slavery, and it was women's suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Douglas opposed slavery. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't know, Douglas was affectionately referred to as a women's rights fan.
Uh-huh.
The first ever women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, back in 1841.
Mm-hmm.
Susan B. Anthony attended that convention. Sojourner Truth was there. 200 women were there, and 32 men were also there. But guess what, Petra?
What?
Only one man was invited to speak. That was Frederick Douglass.
That's right. That's right.
And so Douglass was an ordained minister. Many people don't know. So Douglass had an appreciation for life at any stage.
Mm-hmm.
At any stage.
Yes, from the beginning to the end.
Because Douglass, as a young 6'5", 6-year-old boy, he saw his aunt being whipped, which made a permanent impression on his heart. He saw blacks being indiscriminately shot in the head or killed on a plantation. And all the different things they did on a plantation to take away our spirit and drive. Douglass witnessed all that. To include, I read one where on some plantations to discourage blacks from running away, they'll actually cut a woman's belly open that was like 8 or 9 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Those kind of things.
Wow.
So when I started reading Douglass, I started understanding more about my impression as a black man in this country, and not to see myself as a victim, but see myself more than a conqueror.
Right.
You follow me?
Right.
See,
right.
See, if I see myself as a victim, I must depend on somebody else to go get it for me.
No, and we can't do that because no one's
right.
going to do that for us. No one's going to do that. So I know that he did stand for life, and that life, starts from the beginning, conception to death. And I am a strong believer in being an anti-abortionist. I believe that life is life, and no one should take the life of a child. Okay. My next question is about, I was going to talk about limited government, but I will give you a few minutes to talk about that, and then I want to go to government entitlement programs.
Okay. Limited government?
Yes.
Well, when you read Douglas, now I'm referring to everything to Douglas, all the in the day of this country, Douglas not only wrote about it, in many cases he lived through it. Mm-hmm. In terms of limited government, when you are a slave, the form of government that's over you, that controls your everyday life, is your slave master. Mm-hmm. So his slave master was his government. The government had power. The slave master had power.
Yes.
Douglas had no rights. Mm-hmm. The government has power. Mm-hmm. We have rights. So what I learned from Douglas, there's always an inverse relationship between power and rights. Mm-hmm. The more power the slave master had, less rights or no rights Douglas had. Right. The more power the government has, the less rights we have.
People have, right.
And so that's why the founding fathers wrote the Constitution that limited the power of the federal government.
Absolutely.
And now they're going overboard.
Yeah,
we got to get it back.
They are going overboard right now. They want to take over health care. They want to do all kinds of things. It's really ridiculous. Let's go to government entitlement programs, the welfare program. Give me how would Frederick Douglass have thought about that in this day and age?
Well, as I read and studied Douglas said entitlements must be used effectively.
Yes.
You use entitlements to jumpstart your life, not to make it a permanent part of your life.
Absolutely.
Let's take Douglas's life. Douglas was a slave for the first 20 years of his life. Mm-hmm. The slave master took care of his shelter. The slave master provided clothing, food, and his health care. Mm-hmm. But while on the plantation, while on the system, Douglas maximized educational opportunities because he learned how to read and write when he was a slave. Mm-hmm. That's important because many blacks, when they escaped from slavery, if they couldn't read and write, many of them committed suicide because they couldn't function on the outside, and many more went back into slavery.
Wow.
Douglas knew how to read and write before he escaped from slavery. As a matter of fact, as a teenage boy on a plantation, Douglas started a tutorial program to teach blacks how to read and write. So why? When they got to the opportunity for liberty and freedom, they could excel. Right. So that's key. So Douglas said, well, we got to do with the poor. Douglas said, we got to elevate the poor.
That's
elevate. Right. Don't just give them entitlements for life, but elevate the poor to become employers or employees.
That's right. That's right. So go ahead.
Yeah. Petra, key thing about Douglas. Mm-hmm. Douglas was born below poverty, meaning that he was born into slavery. Yes. So when you're born into poverty, at least you own your own body.
That's right.
But when you're born into slavery, you're born below poverty. And he was in that state for 20 years.
Wow.
Douglas escaped from slavery 1838 at the age of 20. Mm-hmm. He escaped from slavery. He ran away from slave master entitlements.
Right.
He ran away from it.
Right.
The free housing.
Right.
The health care.
Right.
And what he did was he discovered his God-given gifts and his God-given talents, and he took his obsession and he made it a profession.
That's right.
He was a writer. He was a speaker. He wrote 3 books. He was a lecturer. And one thing people don't know, when Douglas died in 1895, at the age of 77 of years of age, Douglas had amassed $300,000 in savings.
Wow.
$300,000 back then is more than $10 million
millions.
Today.
That's millions in because that was real money. It was backed up by gold at that point in time.
So think about it, Petra. Douglas, you know when Governor Romney made the silly comment that 47% of the people are not going to vote for me, I disagree with that because there's people who are 47%, they inspire to be more. You just got to give them an opportunity. But Douglas rose from being born below zero, he died a 1%er.
Yes, and how good is that? You know, and that's why entitlement only keeps one down, and that's the problem with people in this day and age. They, you know, they'll get on the welfare, and then their mother's on it, their grandmother, their great-great-grandmother, their great-great-great-great-grandmother, and they never know how to get off of it. It's like a cycle, and all the talents that they have is lost. They could be doctors and lawyers and whatever, but it's a lost thing. And then they get their free Section 8 housing and everything else. And my God, they feel like they're living in cloud nine.
There's no rags to riches story while you're on entitlement.
No, it's not.
You can't end generational poverty while you're a slave. Harriet Tubman has a quote. She said on one occasion, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed more only if they knew they were slaves." That's what we have going on today.
Yeah, it's modern day slavery.
That's right. We have to show people that you're not a victim, you're more than a conqueror.
That's right.
We have to change that narrative
and
inspire their spirit.
That's right.
And so, and the reason why Douglas is so key, and I thank God for showing me Douglas, because I don't care what anybody in the United States is going through today. You cannot out-victimize Frederick Douglass.
And he didn't act like a victim. And that's the good thing about it. You know, and we have to learn from what we see. That's why it's so important that we read and we educate ourselves. I'm going to go to another question now because we're running down right now. My next question is, how is the government destroying wealth creation?
Through incremental tax increases.
Okay.
You know, we're told that we should envy people who make over $250,000 a year, and we got to tax them more. That's not the system that works.
No.
Because what that does, you create more this class envy. You create more separation, and the poor never rise.
That's right.
What the government has to do. The government said on one occasion, Douglas said, he said the first duty of the national government, he called it, is protection.
Yes.
The problem is the federal government is trying to be our provider.
And he's not our daddy.
No, he's not a God either.
No, he's not.
In my case, Jehovah is my source.
That's
not
right.
the government.
That's right.
So the government is supposed to protect me, not provide for me.
That's right.
Lower the cost of health care, but allow me as a man to have self-dignity to purchase it for my family.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you 100%. My next question, dear, is you talked about success strategies which entail listening, learning, and living. Can you please elaborate on each of these principles? And I know we just have a few minutes, so just elaborate just as much so that our viewers can get a feel of what you're going to be talking about on Saturday, the 25th of January.
The success strategies. I heard the very parts that I got a 2-year-old in my ear. And there's a chapter of the book where I was curious about how did this man Frederick Douglass become so successful? Who was his mentor? Who encouraged him? Who inspired him? And the conclusion I drew was this, that Douglass had no positive male role models. But Douglass became an avid reader, so words on paper became his mentor. And by being by knowing how to read, he traveled the world through books. He didn't have the internet. And by traveling the world, he was inspired by the things he read that motivated him, that inspired him. So because Douglas was an avid reader, that is a key for success. And I didn't hear the other part of that question.
Okay. Yes, I was talking about the listening, learning, and living. So whatever we learn, we live it. Whatever we learn.
The listening piece. One of the other strategies, or the part of this action plan that Douglas put together, he listened to the stories of his grandmother. I remember reading when Douglas was maybe 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7. His grandmother, at this time his mother was dead, and his grandmother would say to Freddie, our people were originally free in Africa. We had always been slaves. So Doug said, if my people were originally free, then why am I a slave today? Douglas said, right then I started putting me a plan together for my escape. because of the stories he's heard. We got to tell our young folks that, look, you got to be 10 times as better than anybody else.
That's right.
You got to work hard because you have a gift. You have royalty running through your blood. That's what he was telling Freddie.
That's right.
And you must succeed because we're dependent on you. Not to accept the handouts of entitlements that's going to leave you shackled to a system of slavery, but use it to jumpstart your life.
That's right.
That's why Douglas is so key. I thank God every day for giving us a Frederick Douglass to look at right now based on what we're dealing with this country.
And I thank God for you because you're enlightening us and giving us wisdom so that we can at least try to strive to be like Frederick Douglass and to get out of the poverty mentality. Now, you state there is a process of advancement which includes education, any kind of work, steady work, and entrepreneur. How would this affect our young people today?
When you look at Douglas' life, I mentioned how Douglas was a one percenter. He was not born a one percenter, but Douglas had a process that he followed. Douglas said on one occasion, the key to success, Douglas said, is work, work, work. When you look at Douglas' life, when he escaped from slavery, he found any kind of job he could to keep money in his pocket. He dug ditches. He found any kind of job. Then after a while, after graduating from any kind of job, he found a part-time job. He did that for a while. He went from a part-time job to a full-time job. And once he graduated from a full-time job, Douglas became an entrepreneur. That's the system that Douglas used. And the key thing to remind folks is that success is not a secret. Success is a system. Find you a system that works for you. I remember one time Pete Diddy was asked, how did he become so successful? And Diddy said, I just repeated what Russell Simmons did.
So success is a